Welcome to Creep Time with Silas. This is the disturbing story of the model who ate her husband. So this is Omaima Ari. She was a 23-year-old Egyptian model who was living in Los Angeles in kind of the late 80s to the early 90s. By 1991, she marries 56-year-old Bill Nelson, who's a pilot in Los Angeles, and the abuse of this marriage starts almost instantly. She was subjected to physical abuse, she was repeatedly SA'd in her own home, and that is until one November night when she completely snaps and she ends up beating and stabbing Bill to death. She then starts to dismember the body and she starts to cook and boil it piece by piece, even going as far as to barbecue his ribs and reportedly eat them. She would later go on to receive a full life sentence and is deemed insane by the courts, where she appeals her parole repeatedly, but the judges believe that she is an indefinite threat to society. 3 of the most dangerous roads in America and why you should avoid them at all costs. Number 1. One of the most treacherous and terrifying roads sits on top of a Colorado mountain with a drop so steep you'd rather not look down it while driving. The road has no guardrails and very tight turns, meaning one wrong move could be your last. Number 2. This one is known as the Overseas Highway. It stretches from Miami all the way to Key West and goes for a full 545 miles. The prolonged ride over nothing but the ocean has proven to be both dangerous and anxiety-inducing, with an average of 108 people who die on this route every single year. Number 3. Although it kind of looks scenic at first, the back road of Highway 17 is filled with sharp blind spots and no light past sundown. But the real danger of this route that poses a fatal risk is actually the wildlife, as the mountain lions are known to jump directly from trees onto your car. 3 urban legends that turned out to be true. Number 1. In the 1980s, parents in Long Island terrified their children with the legend of Cropsey. He was a murderous man who lived beneath an abandoned school and would capture children. But it was later found that the old janitor of the school was still living on school grounds, and it's believed he was responsible for the disappearance of several kids, which made the legend of Cropsey true. Number 2. Charlie No Face was the terrifying legend of a featureless man who would roam the streets of Pittsburgh at night. But it was discovered that this man did exist. His name was Raymond Robinson. He was a very nice guy, and he only left his house at night as he feared his deformity would scare people. Number 3. Legend has it that an escaped asylum patient roams near the Fairfax County Bridge, where countless amounts of dead rabbits have been found. There wasn't any legitimacy to this legend until a couple drove through this bridge in the 1970s, only to find a man dressed as a bunny who threw an axe through their windshield before they got away. So a couple of days ago on Live, somebody asked me if I've had any paranormal experiences, and I actually told a story that wasn't from me, it was from my brother while we were at my grandma's. This is a picture of her foyer. Just to give some familial context here, of me and my other siblings, my brother is the least theatrical, I guess. He doesn't tell stories, he doesn't embellish, he doesn't do stuff like this, which is why I fully believe this. So anyway, we're at my grandma's one night, I'm in the kitchen, he's in the TV room, and if you look to the left when you're in the TV room, this is exactly what you see. You see the foyer leading to the front door, and you see on the right the archway leading to the living room. Suddenly, he starts screaming and panicking, and he is yelling that there is an old man in the house who is in the living room. So what he said he saw was an old man dressed in white with long white hair peering from around this archway right here. But we flipped the house upside down. We never found anything. And to this day, my brother doesn't like to talk about this. So, in 1963, President JFK was assassinated, which gave way to a host of conspiracy theories, most of which we already know. But one of the only ones with camera footage that can verify its subject is the story of this woman, known as the Babushka Lady. Arguably, she was one of the closest spectators to actually see the assassination and was even seen snapping pictures at the exact moment that JFK was hit. So naturally, the FBI wanted her eyewitness account, and they wanted that up-close camera footage, but she was never found, and no one seems to know who this woman was. There was a woman named Beverly Oliver who came forward who claimed that this was her, but she would have been 17 at the time, which doesn't really match up with the photos, and it's believed that she probably fabricated this story for 15 minutes of fame. But who the real Babushka Lady was remains an unknown, and why she's never come forward with the footage she captured has never been determined. Try to imagine a scenario where you're jumping out of a plane through the middle of the night in the rain. The mysterious case of D.B. Cooper is is what put this exact scenario on the map. On November 24th, 1971, a plane was hijacked by a mysterious unknown man going by Dan Cooper, otherwise known as D.B. Cooper. So while carrying a bomb on this plane, he demands that they land the plane, the FBI provides him $200,000 cash, 4 parachutes, and they refuel the plane. So of course, because he has hostages, they comply. So they provide him the money, the plane is refueled, and they are back in the air on the way to Mexico City per his instructions. But at some point after they take off, unannounced, D.B. Cooper grabs the parachute, grabs the money, and jumps out of the plane into the night sky, and he was never seen again. But most paratroopers weighed in on this and don't believe anyone could have survived this jump in these conditions. That being said, his body was never found, nor was the bulk of that money. I genuinely do not even care if this video does well. Can someone please just explain to me what these things are? If you can tag a scientist, or if you are a scientist, could you please weigh in here and just explain this to me? So if you look at these videos of them, they're just these long-legged white creatures. They're only captured at night on like garage camera footage, but they don't have extremities like a head or arms. But what freaks me out is that they're so consistent. All of these videos that come out of these, they all look the same. They're from different locations, but they're all kind of in the California area. Like, what is that? What is that? Okay, like, keep your eyes over to the right-hand side of this video. Look in the dark corner. Look at that. Like, what? There's no way that that's... Look at it again, magnified. Do you see that? Who's faking that? What? The only contextual tie-in that I found are these Native American carvings that do kind of show creatures that look like these, but these sculptures don't really have a lot of historical context to them, so I'm begging you for rational explanations here. Please, somebody weigh in, tell me what these things are. It's Christmas Eve, so I couldn't give up the chance to tell you a creepy Christmas story. And if you love Creep Time and you want longer content, make sure to check out my YouTube channel with the link in the bio. So we're pretty familiar with how the whole Santa situation works, right? I mean, we kind of get the gig. He comes down the chimney and he leaves us presents. But around the holiday season in 2015, a California home got an unexpected visitor down their chimney. After returning to their house, it was a cold evening, so they lit up a fire but were terrified when they heard the sounds of screaming coming from inside their chimney. Wedged between the bricks was a man who had attempted to sneak in and burglarize the house but had gotten stuck. The fire department arrived and rushed to dismantle the chimney to get him out in time, but with the heat of the fire there was too much damage caused and the burglar had died while trapped inside, making this a grisly holiday memory that this home would never forget. We're looking at the creepiest things in the US to check out on your next road trip. And if you guys are loving Creep Time and you want longer creepy content, make sure to check out my YouTube channel. Just use the link that's right in the bio. Minneapolis, Minnesota is home to what's known as the quietest room on Earth. Completely encased in 3-foot deep absorption panels and completely open to the public. When you step into this room, sound levels will drop to negative 9.4 decibels. This is a space that's so quiet that within seconds of stepping into it, your ear can only hear your own body fluids. You hear your stomach digesting, you hear your blood pumping. Those who do enter the room, of course, have to sign over consent, and it's recommended that you don't spend a prolonged period of time in here, as they've learned that within 45 minutes you can develop a psychosis. But it wasn't too long ago that Microsoft Laboratories actually set out to steal this title and ended up creating a room that was even quieter at negative 20.6 decibels. The Minneapolis location is open for tours for your next road trip, but very few people are allowed inside the Microsoft room. On February 19th of 2013, guests of the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles were complaining of poor-tasting tap water that was running brown. But when the hotel staff went to the roof to check the water tanks, what they found was horrific. Floating inside the tank were the 2-week-old remains of 21-year-old Elisa Lam. But here's why her death became kind of infamously mysterious. Elisa had been missing for weeks prior, which correlated with this strange and unusual video footage from the hotel elevator, which is believed to be her last known sighting. While inside the elevator, she's seen hiding, then pressing all of the buttons, and then she appears to be speaking to someone who's not there. But even more mysterious is how she even got on the roof in the first place. The roof access point is actually set with an alarm that only hotel staff can get past and disarm using a key card. Her autopsy showed nothing in her system aside from prescription medications, and what's strange is that when search canines were on the roof just days prior looking for her, they had never picked up her scent. The body was also found completely undressed in the water, and her cell phone has never been found. There has never been any evidence of foul play or that she was SA'd, and her death was eventually ruled as accidental due to a psychotic break, but the odd nature of how all of this unfolded has left a lot of unanswered questions for this case. Do you know why the safety seal exists on most medications? The story behind this is a lot darker than you might imagine. So in 1982, 12-year-old Mary Kellerman died at home under mysterious circumstances. That exact same day, 27-year-old Adam Janis died as well, and then his brother, and then his sister-in-law. Over the course of several days, there were 7 people in total who all died under these mysterious circumstances. That is until investigators found the common link: over-the-counter bottles of Tylenol. It was found that an unknown number of these bottles had all been opened within their stores and were laced with cyanide. All medications were pulled from shelves across the entire country. The manufacturer loses hundreds of millions of dollars on this. But the culprit for this was never actually caught, and it's unknown how many bottles across the US were tampered with that potentially could have caused a mass national casualty. Since 1982, safety seals have become a staple on all over-the-counter medications in the US. Telling the stories of TikTokers as if they're true crime cases. This is the story of Max Taylor. Max first rose to fame on TikTok in his early 20s just about 2 years ago. He was known for his comedy-driven TikToks and a very specific curvature to his body. But behind all of this, there was a dark secret that Max was keeping. Behind closed doors, Max was deepening a fixation on Hollywood actor Ryan Reynolds. Early clues and indications in his videos gave us a bit of a window into the mind of Max and how this obsession would quickly turn sinister. But this all changed in early 2022. Reportedly one evening, Ryan Reynolds is recorded phoning into law enforcement from an undisclosed location where he says he's being held. What Ryan failed to mention to police was that he was being held in some seriously swole arms. The investigation is currently ongoing. Telling the stories of TikTokers as if they're true crime cases. This is the tale of Brittany Broski. Brittany was a young woman living out in Texas in 2019 when she created a video that changed everything. This was not a normal video. In the video, she can be seen drinking kombucha with an array of reactions and faces of disgust. Following the fame of the video on Stan Twitter, Brittany was subsequently fired from her job, leading her out to California with an accomplice named Sarah Shower. It was around this time that they both crossed paths with a woman named Tracy Martell. Tracy had taped numerous videos with Brittany as the subject where she can be seen repeatedly scalping her on camera. It's believed Brittany survived the ordeal, although no one knows of her current whereabouts. She's most recently been spotted in a series of videos that seem to be confined to one room, although police have no way of knowing if this is a bunker or if she's being held here. And Tracy Martell has never been caught. Would you be able to spot this and know that you've even seen it? In the 50s, 60s, market scientists found that interjecting extremely short messages and visuals into entertainment increased the likelihood for the audience to follow through with that message, aka a subliminal message. But are we even aware of the subliminal messages we've seen? The reality is, we'd have no way of knowing. It would flip on the screen for a single frame, but it can impact your subconscious to decide where you spend your money and what you pay attention to. This was all later deemed unethical at an international level, and it fell out of practice because it was considered a form of mind control. But because the ethics of this fell into question, the theory is that advertisers then switched to using non-words and suggestive imagery to try to capture your attention. How many ads do you think you've seen in your lifetime where you unknowingly changed your perception of a brand or a movie or a TV show just based on hidden visuals? Scary stories in 60 seconds or less. So this girl had worked at Nordstrom's as a seasonal employee every Christmas through college for the last 3 years. On her closing shift, it was only her and her manager, and she had the task of closing down the women's floor before she would clock out. After all of her nightly to-dos, she went to the women's dressing room to hit the lights before she was gonna leave. But she was startled by something. A pair of men's shoes that were under one of the dressing room doors. She was mostly kind of annoyed by this because they had already made announcements saying the store was closing, so she just kind of makes a declarative statement and says, "Sir, you have to leave the store, we are closing in 10 minutes. But she got no response, so she started to feel a little uneasy when suddenly the feet turned in her direction. But oddly enough, she wasn't feeling afraid, so she just approached the door and opened it. But then she froze. There was no one in that dressing room. This was not an instance of her eyes playing tricks on her. She saw feet and legs, and they moved under that door. A YouTuber made a video before going cave exploring, but then completely disappeared. His name was Kenny Veach, and he was a popular YouTuber who would take solo cave trips for his channel. But in what would become his last video, he talked about a cave that he found called M Cave. He said that he found it about 6 miles from a restricted military base, and when he went inside to explore it, the further he went, his body started to vibrate, which freaked him out, so he eventually climbed out of the cave. But he declared in that final video that he was going to go back and he was determined to explore that cave. Sadly, he was never found after this video. Only his phone was recovered, and what he experienced in that cave we still don't know. Pictures of things you just weren't meant to see. These all make me feel so uncomfortable. Have you ever wondered what's inside a bowling ball? Because I did not think it was this. I also had no idea that tiger stripes go down to their skin. I thought it was like a fur pattern only. Before paint gets put into a mix machine, this is what it looks like. I thought this was ramen. Or have you ever seen a bathroom before they drill the stalls into the wall? Tell me this doesn't give like intense daycare vibes. Like, why were bathrooms set up like this? What is going on? These are the strangest requests prisoners have made for their final meals. Victor Fager was sentenced after tricking a doctor into believing his wife needed medical attention, only for him to end him right in his living room for no reason. Strangest part about his last meal request? A single olive. Thomas J. Grosso was sentenced after ending an 85-year-old woman using just Christmas lights. His strangest request was that for part of his last meal, he wanted an uncooked can of SpaghettiOs, which was so weird, the officers didn't give it to him. They just got at him regular hot spaghetti. His last words were, "I did not get my SpaghettiOs. I got spaghetti, and I want the press to know this." So now we know it. And then there was James Edward Smith, who just requested a pile of dirt. But they think that he was just mostly trying to be funny, and he eventually settled for just a cup of yogurt. He went out on a Yoplait. Jennifer Kesse had everything to live for. She had a great family, she had a loving boyfriend, and she was just promoted at her job. But when she failed to show up for work one morning, her family became concerned, so they drove over to her apartment. Police were called, and they found evidence that Jennifer had been there that morning as her towels were still wet from her shower and she had laid out her work clothes on her bed. But she never got changed for work. A search canine tracked her scent and found that she left her apartment, got in her car, and then just vanished. Days later, her car was found in a complex parking lot, and it had been completely wiped clean for DNA evidence, and a camera caught this person leaving the scene. The camera footage was too grainy to tell who this was, but it's believed it might have been a woman between 5'3" and 5'5". Sadly, Jennifer has never been found, and whoever this person is, it remains a mystery.